Welcome back to my channel, travelers. The new Notlon patch is bringing a ton of rewards with it, one of which is a free standard 5-star selector. You've probably seen a lot of similar videos floating around, so if this is all repeat for you, then feel free to click off and watch something else. However, if you're curious about what I'll say, then stick around. If you don't have all the standard banner characters yet, you may be wondering who to choose or which characters would suit your teams the best. Well, that's what I'm here for. I'll be going through what each character's strengths are, what teams they fit into best, and why you might want them. As I drafted this script though, I also went into the particulars of each character's kit, which does make this video a little longer than expected and could be a bit heavy on details, but I hope it gives you a better understanding of what these characters do and how they might be of use to you. I want this video to focus less on who's the best standard 5-star and more on what each character does and what you may want when it comes to the characters you already own. So without further ado, let's hop into it. Jean is an Anemo sword user who can function as a support or a DPS. However, for this video, I'll be focusing on her strength as a healer, as it's more of what her kit was intended for in my opinion. By using Jean's skill, you can launch enemies with Anemo damage, and if you hold it, you can draw in smaller enemies before launching them. Her burst lays down a field which deals AoE Anemo damage and heals a large portion of HP for all party members based on her attack. This field will remain active for a period of time, intermittently dealing Anemo damage to enemies and healing party members within it. Her burst will also imbue allies with Anemo, making them able to trigger the swirl reaction. For her passive talents, her first ascension gives her normal attacks a 50% chance to heal party members based on 15% of her attack. Her fourth ascension passive will regenerate 20% of her burst's energy when she uses it. So then, where does Jean shine best? Honestly, Jean is a great healer because she fits into almost any team. The ability to trigger Swirl while within her burst's AoE makes her able to use the Viridescent Venerer artifact set, which can really help out teams whose main carries are Pyro, Electro, Hydro, or Cryo. So, if you use a DPS of any of these elements and you want a healer who can shred resistances to this element, then Jean is an excellent pick. However, if you have an Anemo DPS and want a second Anemo character to generate extra particles, or maybe you want the double Anemo buff, then Jean works great in this position too. She can be especially great at generating energy particles in any team if you put Favonia's sword on her. The only team I wouldn't suggest for her would be Geocomps. Where she functions just fine as a healer in these teams, she won't be utilizing her full potential. To finish off this section, I'll give brief instructions for how to build Jean in the healer role. For weapons, she can use many of the 5-star options so long as they give her attack percent and or energy recharge. I'd say Skyward Blade, Primordial Jade Cutter, and Freedom Sworn are the best 3 options for 5-star weapons. As far as 4-star weapons go, I suggest Favonia's Sword, Amanoma Kageuchi, or Sacrificial Sword. That being said, pretty much any attack percent weapon works because it'll increase how much she heals. Jean's best artifact sets are Viridescent Venerer and Noblesse Oblige. The first shreds the elemental resistance of an enemy who is dealt swirl damage with said element, and the second increases her party's attack by 20% for 12 seconds after she uses her burst. As far as main stats are concerned, go for an attack percent or energy recharge Sands, an attack percent or Anemo damage bonus Goblet, and crit rate, crit damage, or healing bonus on the Circlet. The best substats for her are attack percent, energy recharge, crit, and elemental mastery. That's all for Jean, now on to the next character. Diluc is a Pyro Claymore-wielding character whose role is Pyro DPS, or main damage dealer. His skill can be activated 3 times, and each one deals a hit of pyro damage. His burst sends out a phoenix that deals AoE pyro damage and then flies off, and then his weapon becomes infused with pyro for 8 seconds. His first ascension passive decreases the stamina usage of his charge attacks by 50%, and his charge attacks can last 3 seconds longer. His fourth ascension passive gives the pyro infusion state from his burst 4 extra seconds of duration, and he gains a 20% pyro damage bonus during its effect. Diluc is best suited for teams that focus on pyro-based reactions, namely Vaporize and Melt. Therefore, he works well with characters who can apply these elements from off-field while also buffing his damage. Think of characters like Xingqiu, Farina, Rosaria, etc. Where his burst has a low energy cost, he still benefits from a double pyro team for the attack buff it gives. This low energy cost on his burst can also ensure almost constant pyro infusion, which is really nice. With Shen Yun's release, it has also been a new choice to play him in a plunging attack playstyle due to the high scalings on his plunging attacks. Diluc's best 5-star weapons are Beacon of the Reed Sea, Red Hornstone Thresher, and Wolf's Gravestone. His best 4-star options are Serpent Spine, Prototype Archaic, and Tidal Shadow. For artifact sets, look no further than the Crimson Witch of Flames set. This set gives him pyro damage bonus as well as buffs to his reaction damage. Another option is Marchose Hunter, but I only recommend the 4-piece if you have Farina in the team with him. The 2-piece is quite versatile though, buffing his normal and charged attacks, while the 4-piece increases his crit rate when he loses and/or restores HP, and this effect can stack up to 3 times. The main stats Diluc wants are as follows: attack percent or elemental mastery on the sands, pyro damage bonus on the goblet, and crit rate or crit damage on the circlet. His best substats are crit, attack percent, and elemental mastery. Energy recharge isn't a bad stat, but make sure not to have too much. Mona Magistus is a Hydro Catalyst sub-DPS who deals damage with her skill and burst from off-field. Her skill unleashes an illusion that will taunt enemies and periodically deal Hydro damage. Her burst applies a bubble to enemies, and this bubble will pop when the enemies are next attacked. The bubble deals AoE Hydro damage when it explodes, and then enemies will be marked with Omen, which will cause them to take increased damage for a period of time. She also has an alternate sprint, which causes her to go into the ground or onto the surface of water and turn into water. After her first ascension, being in the alternate sprint for more than 2 seconds will create an illusion similar to the one from her skill. Her 4th ascension grants her Hydro damage bonus equal to 20% of her energy recharge. Mona is best suited to teams that want an off-field Hydro applicator. Additionally, her burst is great for boosting the damage of your chosen main DPS. Because her kit works in any team that wants Hydro, she can be a sub-DPS in teams ranging from Electrocharge to Bloom to whatever you want that incorporates Hydro. However, keep in mind that her Hydro application isn't quite on par with Xingqiu, Yelan, or Farina, especially if she's the only Hydro character in that team. That doesn't take away from her abilities though. Mona's best 5-star weapons are Kagura's Verity, Lost Prayer to the Sacred Winds, and Skyward Atlas. Her best 4 stars include the Widzith, Oathsworn Eye, and Solar Pearl. For artifact sets, consider Emblem of Severed Fate and Noblesse Oblige. However, if you want more raw damage than the supportive abilities of Noblesse Oblige, Nymph's Dream is another good option. The main stats she wants are energy recharge or attack percent on the sands, Hydro damage bonus on the goblet, and crit rate or crit damage on the circlet. Her best substats include crit, attack percent, energy recharge, and situationally elemental mastery. Let's move on to the standard characters from Liyue. Keqing is an Electro Sword user who serves the role of an Electro DPS. I know there are other ways to utilize Keqing as a DPS other than Electro, but I won't be talking about those here in this guide. Her skill casts a lightning stiletto that deals Electro damage. By pressing the skill again, she teleports to its location and deals AoE Electro damage. If she uses her charged attack after unleashing the lightning stiletto instead of recasting the skill, then Electro damage will be dealt at the stiletto's location. Her burst deals multiple instances of Electro damage in an AoE. Her 1st ascension grants her Electro Infusion after recasting her skill. Her 4th ascension passive increases her crit rate by 15% and energy recharge by 15% for 8 seconds after unleashing her burst. What are Keqing's best teams? With the introduction of Dendro, Keqing excels in teams where she can trigger Aggravate. To do this, she needs characters who can apply Dendro well from off-field, so think of characters like Nahida and Dendro Traveler. That being said, she can work well in Electrocharge teams too, and for those teams, make sure you have Hydro supports that can apply the Hydro element for her to trigger this reaction. Her charge attacks deal a high amount of damage, so if you've been looking for an Electro DPS, then I'd say Keqing is a pretty solid option. For weapons, her best 5-star options are Mistsplitter Reforged, Primordial Jade Cutter, and Huron Geppaku Futsu. Her best 4-star weapons are the Black Sword, Lion's Roar, and Iron Sting, but Iron Sting is specifically good in Aggravate teams. Keqing's best artifact sets are Thundering Fury and Gilded Dreams. The latter is especially good in Aggravate team comps. The main stats she wants are attack percent or elemental mastery on the sands, Electro damage bonus on the goblet, and crit rate or crit damage on the circlet. Her best substats are crit, attack percent, elemental mastery, and energy recharge. Keep in mind that elemental mastery is a preferred stat pretty much only in Dendro teams. While we love to joke around about pulling a Qiqi instead of your desired limited character, especially if you're at high pity, she does have her uses, and some of the newer artifact sets have really contributed to making her a better character. Qiqi is a Cryo Sword character who functions as a healer. Her skill summons the Herald of Frost, which periodically deals damage to nearby enemies and heals the active character. If Qiqi's normal or charge attacks hit opponents while her skill is active, she will heal the entire party. Additionally, Qiqi's healing is based on her attack. Her burst applies talismans and deals cryo damage to nearby opponents. Party members will be healed when they attack enemies with talismans applied. Her 1st ascension increases the healing bonus of the active character under the effects of her skill when that character triggers an elemental reaction. This buff lasts for 8 seconds. Her 4th Ascension causes her normal and charged attacks to have a 50% chance to apply a talisman to the enemy hit. This talisman lasts for 6 seconds, and it can occur every 30 seconds. Qiqi fits into teams that want some cryo application and a lot of healing. Additionally, if your main DPS is cryo and you want higher particle generation and or the cryo resonance buff, then Qiqi can be a good option. And with the artifact sets I'll recommend, her extreme amount of healing can be weaponized or turned into a buff. Qiqi's best 5-star weapons are Skyward Blade, Freedom Sworn, and Primordial Jade Cutter. 4-star weapons that suit her are Favonius Sword, Finale of the Deep, and Sacrificial Sword. Her best artifact sets are Ocean-Hued Clam, which turns overhealing into physical damage, and Song of Days Past, which turns overhealing into a damage buff for the active character. For her main stats, look for an attack percent or energy recharge sands, attack percent or cryo damage bonus goblet, and healing bonus, crit rate, or crit damage on the circlet. Good substats for her include energy recharge, attack percent, and crit. Now that Qiqi is out of the way, let's move on to our last 2 standard characters who are both from Sumeru. As a Dendro Bow user, Tighnari is a DPS who wants to trigger the spread reaction. He relies on his powerful charged attacks to trigger this reaction and deal damage. His skill lays down a field that disorients enemies and deals 1 instance of Dendro damage to them. Additionally, Tighnari's next 3 charge shots will instantly charge up to their level 2 state while this field is active. His burst fires out 6 Tanglevine shafts which deal Dendro damage to enemies and then split into smaller Tanglevine shafts to deal additional damage. After his 1st Ascension, after Tighnari fires off a level 2 charge shot, called a Wreath Arrow, his Elemental Mastery will increase by 50 for 4 seconds. His 4th Ascension passive increases the damage of Tanglevine shafts based on his Elemental Mastery. Like I mentioned before, Tighnari wants to trigger the spread reaction to deal the most amount of damage. In order to do this, he needs Electro supports who can help trigger Quicken first. Think of characters like Fischl, Shinobu, and Miko. Another Dendro character can be great in a team with Tighnari to increase his elemental mastery and to potentially hold on to the Deepwood Memories artifact set. For his 5-star weapon choices, consider Hunter's Path, the First Great Magic, and Aqua Simulacra. His best 4-star options are the Stringless, Scion of the Blazing Sun, and King's Squire. Tighnari's best artifact sets are Wanderer's Troop and Gilded Dreams. However, if you play him as the only Dendro character in the team, I suggest using Deepwood Memories for the Dendro resistant shred on enemies. The desired main stats are Elemental Mastery Sands, Dendro Damage Bonus or Elemental Mastery Goblet, and Crit Rate or Crit Damage Circlet. For substats, keep an eye out for Elemental Mastery, Crit, and Attack percent. Last character, guys, gals, and everyone else. Dehya is our other Pyro Claymore standard 5-star, but her role differs from Diluc. Where you can build her as a DPS, it's mostly recommended to use her as a support/sub-DPS who can absorb incoming damage in place of your DPS. For her skill, Dehya will create a Fiery Sanctum which deals AoE pyro damage. When enemies within its area take damage, the Fiery Sanctum will deal a coordinated attack dealing pyro damage. This can occur every 2.5 seconds and the damage is based on both her attack and max HP. Allies within the Fiery Sanctum will have their resistance to interruption increased, and if they take damage, Dehya will store this damage, then receive it over the course of 10 seconds. However, keep in mind that there is a limit to how much damage she can receive from her skill in this way. Dehya's burst puts her in the Blazing Lioness state, which increases her resistance to interruption and causes her to punch enemies in front of her. These punches will deal pyro damage based on both her attack and max HP, and they will replace her normal and charged attacks. After this state ends, she'll deal AoE pyro damage. If a Fiery Sanctum was active upon casting her burst, she will pick it up and place a new one where she ends the Blazing Lioness state. This Fiery Sanctum will inherit the duration of the first. Her 1st Ascension passive decreases the amount of damage she takes from her skill for 6 seconds after recasting her skill or using her burst. Additionally, the initial cast of her skill grants party members increased resistance to interruption for 9 seconds. Her 4th Ascension passive causes her to replenish her own HP when it falls below 40%. Her kit has quite a few sections to it, so I hope this explanation was brief while also being complete enough to understand the whole of it. Dehya is actually very good in mono pyro teams, or teams where pyro is pretty much the only element present, maybe with an Animo or Geo character in there. Her skill's damage cooldown makes its ability to trigger reactions a bit inconsistent, but she can function fine in Burgeon teams as well. Emily's kit hints at more burning-focused teams or characters in the future, and this is a place I see Dehya working well in too. For her 5-star weapons, Beacon of the Reed Sea, Wolf's Gravestone, and Redhorn Stone Thresher are good ones. Her best 4-star claymores are Tidal Shadow, Portable Power Saw, and Favonius Greatsword. Consider Tenacity of the Millelith or Vorukasha's Glow for her artifact sets. The main stats Dehya wants are HP percent or attack percent on the sands, pyro damage bonus or HP percent on the goblet, and crit rate or crit damage on the circlet. Her best substats are HP percent, attack percent, crit, and energy recharge. Because her damage has 2 different scalings, choose one to focus on and stick with it. For example, if you choose an HP percent sands, try using artifacts with higher HP substats and weapons with HP percent or energy recharge. That being said, I understand how difficult it is to get ideal stats on artifacts every single time, so of course, use the best of what you can get. And there you have it! Those are all the current standard banner 5 stars as of August 2024, and your options for the upcoming 5-star picker. Just to review and make sure you understand, I'll quickly go over every character's rules again. Jean is an Animo healer and buffer, Diluc is a Pyro main DPS, Mona is a Hydro sub DPS, Keqing is an Electro main DPS, Qiqi is a Cryo healer, Tighnari is a Dendro main DPS, and Dehya is a Pyro sub DPS with some supportive capabilities. If there is one of these characters you have been wanting, then 5.0 will be a great time to nab what you need. If you already have all the standard characters though, then you might consider getting a constellation for whichever character you use the most. I know I will personally be selecting Dehya, as she's the only standard character I haven't obtained yet. But will I actually build her? We'll see. Perhaps the release of Notlon will give us characters she has better synergy with. Well, I feel I've talked enough about this, but I hope you all found this video useful. Consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and let me know in the comments who you intend to select. Bye for now!